So thank you all for having me. Congratulations to everyone that was recognized today. This is my first event doing something like this, and so I am filling in for one of our analysts. According to my introduction, this is not my purview. I do know everything there is to know about CoStar. Not everything, I should say. I'm always a student of CoStar. But I am filling in for Chris today. He's a good friend of mine, helped me out a lot when I was in the training program. I'm running that for our headquarters for the past 4 years, and so I'm happy to be up here and share what he has put together for you all. So. I was given about 10 minutes. I talk fast, and I'm pretty sure I'm over time right now. So if you want to take pictures or snapshots, I think that the deck will be shared with everyone, and you have access to it afterwards. And if you have any questions later on, please feel free to reach out to myself or my lovely colleagues over here at the CoStar table. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. We were asked to give you guys a high-level overview of what's happening nationally across all asset types, in addition to what's happening here in Georgia specifically. And on top of that, we thought it would be fun to kind of add in a few markets that, as the kids say, you might all be sleeping on and no one's paying attention to. So we'll cover a couple things that are going on in those markets as well. So let's start with our national outlook. I'm sure what I have to say up here is not anything new to what you're hearing already in the market as it pertains to the office space. Employment. We've seen obviously a decrease in demand in office space, and that's going to continue. And as that continues, it's further going to add additional supply, specifically on the sublet market. What's interesting is that despite the fact that we have had tremendous employment growth in 2022, we can see that absorption has decoupled from employment growth here. The limited remaining demand that is in the marketplace, as you probably are all aware, is we're seeing in more recent vintage or newly constructed properties or assets, and those are usually highly amenitized. They're in excellent locations, and it's really a place that people actually want to come back to work or back into the office. So that said, the outlook is further complicated. We have, as you can see here, probably close to 60 million square feet of space that's going to be delivering in the first of the year next year. And so that's also a little troubling if you're part of that office sector. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, and hopefully we'll have more updates as we continue to get into 2023. Moving on to multifamily, if you are in multifamily or do anything in multifamily, what a stellar year 2021 was. I think it was record-breaking across the board in so many ways. But we are seeing that demand slow in the multifamily market as well. So very similar to office. The multifamily market hit an inflection point in the third quarter with rents nationally falling for the first time quarter over quarter in years. So that's something we haven't seen before. Absorption totaled only 50,000 units in Q3, and year to date this year, we've only seen about 190,000 units absorbed in the market across the nation. This is well below the record set in 2021, but it's also below average compared to pre-pandemic figures as well. The third quarter historically records the second highest totals for the year as those summer leasing months start coming to an end. And so you'll see the tempering of demand can be directly tied to probably rising inflation, and it's digging into potential renter household budgets. We're not seeing a lot of people move from Class A to Class A properties. It's likely that they got a really good deal and during lease up, and it's just not worth it for them to pick up and move to the next Class A property. And likewise, we're seeing that in our C Class properties as well. You don't see a lot of movement from C Class to B Class. So that has all slowed. Furthermore, concerns regarding the nation going into recession, as we're all aware of, without a doubt, is going to put a hold on a number of potential household formations. So I do work with several of the top owners in the Southeast, and I do have several of them that are still very bullish in the multifamily market, just simply because there's such a need for housing. Rainbows and butterflies now. Enough about the doom and gloom. Let's move over to some more successful asset classes right now. The industrial market is crushing it. The U.S. industrial leasing activity continues to hold near record highs. It's up a remarkable 60% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Even as North America's largest industrial user, Amazon continues to slow its distribution network expansion. Still, Amazon's pullback and accelerating completion of speculative development projects is beginning to weigh on the market. And existing industrial space listed as available for lease inched up very slightly in the third quarter, and rent gains are starting to moderate. Raise your hand if you were on the retail apocalypse bandwagon in 2022. I was. I mean, look, retail is also crushing it. So it's on a roll. Tenants have continued expanding in the third quarter by leasing just over 53 million square feet of store space, and have remained resilient in the face of growing concerns surrounding the looming recession. This constant consistency of leasing activity and a pullback in move-outs pushed demand for retail space higher than about 16 million square feet during the third quarter, marking it the 7th consecutive quarter of positive absorptions. That's pretty powerful there. The vast majority of this increased demand was concentrated in freestanding properties and smaller retail centers. While the strong retail leasing trends seen in the third quarter were a welcome sign of continued retail expansion, especially among smaller tenants, the probability has grown that the U.S. retail market's recent expansion may run out of steam in 2023. So how does this all compare to Atlanta and Georgia? Well, as you all know, we're all part of the Sun Belt region, and the Sun Belt region is just crushing it. I love the word crushing it. Can't think of anything else to say. And so, office is still, it's not as doom and gloom. We're still seeing deals happening in the Atlanta market. There are headwinds entering Q4 of this year. We have over 5 million square feet of new space that's available between buildings recently delivered or under construction. 3 straight quarters of additions has brought sublease availability to a 15-year high in Atlanta, surpassing the peak of the Great Financial Crisis, or the GFC I heard the other day, if you want to get fancy. Furthermore, complicating all 3 hurdles is the hardening of a trend that appeared before COVID-19. So the clients that I work with and talk to, this isn't something new for them. They've actually been monitoring the square foot per employee go down even prior to COVID, so it's something that they've been working with and dealing with. That hybrid work environment has been around. It was just escalated by the pandemic. We're still seeing a flight to quality that involves those Class A or upper tier products, but a flight to location is also important for people because, as you all know, many people during the pandemic moved out of the city, moved into the suburbs, and now we're seeing those specific suburban markets attractive in terms of office space, as long as you have that Class A type of product. Something to note that I thought was interesting is over 50% of sales volume in the past 12 months here in Atlanta is tied to REITs, private equity buyers, or institutional investors. And the market surpassed about $4 billion in sales volume for the second straight year. Similar to the office story, supply really isn't helping Atlanta right now as demand starts slowing for multifamily. But unlike office, there's little question about the future need for housing in one of the strongest economies in the country. Forecasts show some acute pain, but remember, when we're looking at these charts, we're looking at all properties in CoStar. Those include any properties that are under construction or in lease up right now. So if we were to do a more specific search, we might see a little bit different numbers here. Again, continuing on that great story about industrial, the first property type in which supply really is not a concern, even with record high deliveries and new builds underway. While leasing is slowing, there is so much excess demand for retail space that even speculative builds that take a little bit longer to find that tenant really isn't going to have much impact on the fundamentals for industrial space. So it's pretty encouraging there. And finally, if we look at Atlanta's brick and mortar retail sector, it's certainly not dead. A few retail markets are enjoying more success, of course, for other owners and tenants, but in Atlanta, we're doing pretty good here. Space is being absorbed quickly, and given a relatively shallow development landscape, pricing power remains in the landlord's hands. At least for now anyways. Tenants are willing to pay higher rents to be near Atlanta's varied pockets of strong buying power, growing population centers, and recovering office markets. All right, let's talk about some Georgia hotspots that may not be on the radar, but have some interesting stories to talk about. When we look at Savannah, we think of Savannah as a port market or an industrial market, but there's a lot of activity in the office space here. And as you can see, Georgia's second biggest office inventory among secondary and tertiary metros is the Savannah office market. There was about 125,000 square feet of positive absorption over the last 12 months in Savannah alone. So it's pretty incredible when you think about how small that area is. Medical office is driving recent developments, so a lot of medical office space that we're seeing being developed in that market, and they have the highest rents in the state outside of Atlanta. So pretty interesting there. Gainesville industrial market, I remember when I lived in Georgia maybe like 15 years ago, I worked for Ricoh selling copiers, and it was located in Gainesville, and I drive by all the smelly chicken factories, so that's the only reason I know Gainesville. But they have the lowest unemployment rate in the state, which is pretty incredible. Aerospace, automotive, advanced manufacturing, food processing, and logistics companies have driven leasing in that area. Almost 3 million square feet of net absorption year over year, and this follows 3.3 million square feet that's been delivered in the past 12 months. So again, a very, very strong market up in North Georgia there. And then lastly, we look at the Dalton apartment market. Apartment rents were rising at 9.2% annually in just November, and that's the highest in the state of Georgia. Average annual rent gains of 5.2% over the past 3 years. Employment has recently increased at an annual rate of 2.3%. So we're seeing a lot of activity in the Dalton multifamily market. And then last but not least is the Macon retail market. So the highest year-over-year rent growth among secondary and tertiary markets at 6%. The highest year-over-year increase in median household income at almost 10%. They're benefiting from being in the center of a growing state at the I-16 and I-75 interchange. So they're in a great location. And improvements to the Port of Savannah have really keyed a boom in industrial jobs in Macon. And so I think that was all that I had to present today. I do thank you all for your time, and I will turn it over to Brian, or Kenesha.